This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Let's welcome in our guy Scott now into the program. Scott, we appreciate you making some time for us. We'll start there with Gage. I know that there's been more talk about Smith and Tygart, but what kind of role do you envision Gage Wood having this upcoming season?
Well, hopefully he can piggyback on his freshman year, which is tough to do. His freshman year was tough. His first outing down in Arlington was a little tough. But I think Gage Wood's going to really step up. You see a huge, huge difference between your freshman year and your sophomore year. One, you've gotten a year older. Physically, you're stronger. You've been through the program for a year. You're just not. Things aren't new anymore. So he can fall into the groove and show his talent.
So this Hagen Smith's a projected first rounder. I've seen Tygart pretty high up there as well. And then you bring in Molina from Tech, who was a Friday night guy. I mean, Scott, how much of a luxury is that for Dave Van Horn, where you have two guys that have shown they can win in the SEC? Then you've got an all Big 12 performer that's basically been shoved from Friday to Sunday. What kind of luxury is that for Dave Van Horn have that on his pitching staff already?
Well, if it pans out the way it should on paper, it'll be the luxury. And Chuck can attest to this. The one thing that championship teams have that most other teams don't is that third starter. I mean, a good, solid third starter. Doesn't have to be a superstar, but somebody will get him into the mid to late innings every Sunday. And most teams don't have that. And so if he can fall into that role and he's the guy, because it's got to be a little intimidating for him to come in and, he's the top dog, and all of a sudden he comes in and watching Smith throw and go, holy cow, Tygart throwing, holy cow. Every arm on that staff is upper echelon. So I think that's going to be a key. And some of the stuff that I've read, he struggled a little bit in some inter-squad games when he's going against the ones. And this team is full of ones. It's full of a lot of good hitters. So it's indicative of what he's going to face every weekend when he comes out in the SEC. So I think his success, especially having some early success so that the questions will go away, I think that's going to be key.
Scott Tabor with us on the McClarty Daniel Hotline. Scott, we've been talking about the weather and the challenge that you maybe have today. As a pitcher, tell us about the challenges that the conditions today with wind chills in the 30s, temperatures in the low 40s. If they get to play at 2 o'clock today, what's the challenge for a pitcher in making sure you get your grip the way you want it?
The biggest thing is temperature. Like I said, temperature is keeping your hand warm and moist. Your hands tend to dry out a little bit. The ball dries out a little bit when it gets cold. So you can see, you have to ask the umpire if you can blow into your hand, if that'll be allowable, so that you can get your grip on it, because the grip is everything. Other than that, once you get out there, it's really, really, it's strange. You block out the noise. You don't hear any of the fans. You don't hear, talk about walk-up music. You don't really, at least I didn't really. Of course, we don't think we even had a speaker. But you just kind of block all that out. But sitting in the dugout's worse than being on the mound. Wind in your face, which is that they have a north wind today. I always like going with wind in my face. They say, well, the ball carries farther. Well, if it's going to be cold, it's not going to really carry, but your ball breaks a little bit more. Everything's a little bit sharper when the wind's in your face.
Good insight there on that. The balance of this team, we were discussing this yesterday, and Dave was with us. The balance of hitting versus pitching, and which may lead this team this year. As you've watched some preseason practice and read up on the team, what are you expecting this to be, a more offensive team or a team led by their pitching staff?
It's kind of like going to a spring game in football, where the offense absolutely just wears them out. Say, my gosh, we've got a great offense, and turns out we just have a really bad defense. I think this team, there wasn't a lot of the balance of power was pretty good. It was pretty even. You'd see a lot of strikeouts from the pitchers, then again, you'd see a lot of power from the hitters. And it wasn't you just hits, a ton of hits where somebody's just getting raked, sitting in the back of the bullpen with the tail between their legs. So, on paper, I mean, this team, you look down the lineup and you don't see anything. You don't see any holes. When you're starting a catcher as a leadoff hitter, that's a nice luxury to have. You have an athlete that good who's going to be your catcher. So it's going to be great to see. Then the new shortstop. Every time I look at stats and what have you, is it Alo? I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name.
I think it's Aloy.
Aloy.
Evo
Good
Aloy.
gosh, seems like he's got some serious power. When you have a shortstop hitting up for average and for power, those are great luxuries to have. And if something happens, and it always does, somebody's going to get nicked up a little bit. Being able to move some pieces around and not take a step backwards. And I think that's going to be also the key on the pitching side. And I think Will McIntyre is going to be, I just love the kid. You know, he's just steady. He's the one guy that they can always look to, and they always do look to when things go wrong up front. You know, bring in Mac. You know, let's get a couple innings. Well, now 6 innings later, he's still out there because he doesn't throw a lot of pitches. So I think he's going to have a huge year this year.
Scott, I was going to ask you about him. It's interesting you brought him up because I wonder who the guy on this staff is going to be that you might see on Friday night in the 4th or 5th inning, and he pitches 2 or 3 innings, and then you might see that guy again on Sunday. Who's going to be the guy other than the starters that perhaps we're talking about during the course of the season as being someone that is a real key on the weekends?
That's McIntyre. I mean,
he's the guy.
Chuck, he's the guy. I mean, you look at him; he had to beg to get on the mound, you know, and because in today's game, there's so many fantastic arms, you know, coming out of house analytics, and they should. You can't ignore 95, 96, and McIntyre wasn't that, but he's a pitcher, and he's always tweaking his game. He's learning new pitches, and he's from things that I've seen, he's added a couple of pitches to his repertoire. And that's what you need. You need a guy that comes in and everybody goes, well, I mean, he doesn't really strike many people out. But he goes out and nobody really notices him. You know, it's kind of like the long snapper in football. If you don't know his name, then he's doing something right. Well, he comes out and he's going to give 3 or 4 innings every time he comes. But then you'll see he'll have an inning. He'll have 3 or 4 shutout innings with 8 ground balls and a pop-up. And then the next inning, he can't get an out. You know, so they have to be very aware of where he is, and I guess they look at spin rates now. I used to always watch legs. And you can tell when a guy's losing a little bit from his legs. If they get him in and get him out, and I think they can ride him like an old mule all season long, and I think he'll produce.
Scott, before you go, I wanted to ask you about Dean Weber because I know he was already on campus when you were there, and I know you've been a part of that Letterman's Club that was really his baby and pride and joy. I know you've got some memories and thoughts on Dean Weber.
Well, you know, our head trainer was pumped, Dave England. He was a young guy then, and so I mean, we were baseball. We were way down the pecking order. But when you went up for some treatment, you know, Dean jumped in there and said, "You're going to do this, and this," and he made fun of the baseball players a lot, and he should. You know, we were a bunch of wusses. Never had anybody call me a wuss till Dean for icing our arms, and I've never iced my arm before. I'm talking, and you guys should all try it. Ty, I'd like to watch you do that. You'll cry like a baby. You stick your arm down in a bucket of ice, and you can't take it out. And it's from shoulder to wrist. It hurts. And I'm sitting there jumping around. Had never iced my arm before. Kruger done it forever, and he's on the other side doing it. And he comes over and goes, "You guys are the biggest wusses I've ever seen." You know, and I thought, that's not nice. How long do I have to keep it in here? You keep it in until I tell you to take it out. Well, you know, he's watching out for you, but he does it in a fun way. And he always kept it light in there, and he took care of you if you were hurting. So it's a great loss to the program. And you see from assistant trainers through that to the professional part of it, but also the players. You know, players loved him. So it's a great loss to the game.
Scott, appreciate your time. We'll catch up next week and get ready for a bigger weekend in Arlington.
Real quick, one thing, you know, the flyover for baseball today, I hope they have it, but they're making a big deal out of it. We had flyovers all day when I was playing there. It was the landing strip for Drake Field. They flew over all day from Frontier.
It was the 340 in from Memphis. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they went 104 miles an hour. We clocked them on the jug gun.
All right, man. We'll still talk next Friday.
All right, brother. Go Hogs.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for
your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.